You're very welcome back to another edition of Low Blow Shorts, guys. I'm Jared Leggett, and today I want to talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, aka the cousin you once thought was really cool and different, but they got really weird during COVID and were just never the same since. Specifically, as we prepare for what I call Wrestling Christmas for Wrestle Kingdom 19, which takes place this Saturday, and then we have the Wrestle Dynasty show in association with the likes of AEW, ROH, and Stardom on Sunday morning. This should be the time of year that we're absolutely buzzing about all things New Japan. But let's be honest, we're not, are we? Like, off the top of your head, don't check, don't cheat, okay? Without looking it up, can you name 3 matches that are happening at Wrestle Kingdom this Saturday? This is New Japan's version of WrestleMania that they spent the entire year building up storylines to. Can you name 3 matches? You can't, can you? Which brings me to my next and main point that I'm going to discuss here today. Why New Japan need to break up with AEW. Before we get on to that, though, this episode of Low Blow Shorts is brought to you by our WWE Royal Rumble party, which takes place in the Woolshed this Saturday, 1st of February. Tickets are selling fast, guys. The Royal Rumble is arguably the highlight of the Low Blow's calendar, and it's the first time in Woolshed that we'll have 2 Rumble matches on the night. It's on a Saturday. The show itself, the Rumble, starts at 11 p.m. It's going to be an unreal night for wrestling fans in Dublin City. I can't wait. On top of the Rumble airing live and in full in Woolshed, we'll have a pre-show party from 8 p.m. We're going to play WWE music bingo for the first time ever. Plus, we'll have our annual Royal Rumble raffle where you'll get assigned a number in the Rumble matches. And if that number wins, you win Woolshed dollars that can be used for free booze and food. And there's going to be much more still to be announced. Follow us on socials for updates as we have them. Like I said, tickets are selling fast and we're now limited for tables with no 6 or 8 seat tables left at all. So get on to your mates, get the plan sorted, and get your first big night of 2025 booked in ASAP. To kind of segue from the plans for our next party, at this time of year, I wasn't expecting the Royal Rumble to be our next party because when Low Blows came back last year, that actually wasn't scheduled to be the next party in the calendar we had. We had Ned's Bar booked on the 4th and 5th for a special weekend afternoon events to air Wrestle Kingdom and Wrestle Dynasty, which, when we were in Buskers on the Ball, the Wrestle Kingdom parties quietly became some of the best and most popular nights that we ran. I was absolutely buzzing for it because it was something we've never done in Woolshed before. But then they announced the cards for the show, and there went that dream. We were just like, no, this isn't going to work. I just know it's not going to work, so we're going to have to leave it. And it's not like the wrestling itself will be bad. It won't. They will be good shows. Tetsuya Naito versus Hiromu Takahashi in the Tokyo Dome is a proper dream match that's been built up for years. It'll be really cool to see Zack Sabre Jr. walk out in Tokyo Dome as the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, and kind of cool to see Shota Umino get a huge main event spot as well, even if it feels like it kind of just fell to him randomly rather than being built up in any way. Shingo Takagi and Konosuke Takeshita have the chance to tear the house down in the double title match for the Never Openweight and AEW International Championships. And then on the Sunday, you've got Kenny Omega's comeback match against Gabe Kidd. You've got Zack Sabre Jr. against Ricochet. Shota Umino versus Claudio Castagnoli. Another double title match for Mercedes Moné's Strong Women's Championship against Mina Shirakawa's British Women's Championship. These shows aren't going to be shit in any way. They just feel kind of bang average New Japan or AEW cards. Aside from maybe Kenny Omega's comeback match, there's no real reason for anyone to leave the house, spend money, come out and watch it with friends, especially at the end of a busy, hectic and expensive Christmas period. And that to me is unforgivable. New Japan once seemed like the pinnacle of real wrestling that you could imagine. Their talent on par with anyone in WWE or the world, and the IWGP Heavyweight Championship seemed as prestigious a wrestling title belt as any other in existence, particularly on the 4th of January. It was the show that would have the matches that would set the tone for the year ahead. The gifts would be flying around, and all of your wrestling fan mates who didn't watch New Japan or watch the show live would be texting you asking how they could get in on it. You felt left out of the entire wrestling conversation if you weren't up to date with everything that happened on the Tokyo Dome. Then AEW came along and a few years back began a partnership with New Japan centered around an annual Forbidden Door pay-per-view, but also involving a lot of talent sharing. And wow, since then, the past few January 4th have passed a bit like wet farts. If New Japan and AEW were in an actual relationship, it would be one of those that made you really uncomfortable to hear your friend describe. You know, the type where they try and spin it as really forward and modern and progressive while their eyes scream, "Help me," as they explain it to you. So we're like, monogopoly, like I'm not allowed to cheat on her but twice a week. She fucks my best friend in the next room. I just wear noise cancelling headphones. It's fine. It really is. Fine. The idea that this partnership is an equal partnership is absolutely laughable. Like, if you want to know how your wrestling partner sees you, look at how they position your world heavyweight title matches when they're booking the card. Like, if RevPro, for example, has a mid-card New Japan talent like Tomohiro Ishii, who didn't even get into G1 Climax this year in a singles match to this day, it's usually the main event because New Japan is a bigger company than RevPro, and that's well established. Let's compare how AEW use New Japan wrestlers when they're booking the show. There have been 3 Forbidden Door events to date. All have featured IWGP Heavyweight Championship defenses. In the 2022 event, Jay White defended the actual title in a 4-way match, including big main eventers like Kazuchika Okada, Hangman Adam Page, and Adam Cole, and it got bumped to semi-main event in favor of Jon Moxley versus Hiroshi Tanahashi for the interim AEW World Championship. In 2023, Sanada defended against Jack Perry in a match that was squarely in the mid-card, while the grudge match with Bryan Danielson and Okada main evented. And then this year, a title switch in a well-built feud between Tetsuya Naito and Jon Moxley got 17 minutes in the co-main event slot, while Swerve Strickland wrestled Will Ospreay in a match that didn't even involve any New Japan talent in the main event for the AEW World Championship. AEW tell us all the time through subtle gestures like this that they see themselves as the dominant big brother who's just bringing their nerdy little brother along to hang out with their friends so they can feel cool for the day. Even talent sharing isn't split evenly. It feels like a cool kid bullying a passive kid into giving them their best Pokemon cards. You give me Kazuchika Okada and Will Ospreay, and I'll give you Takeshita and Lance Archer wrestling in the G1. That's fair, right? That's completely fair trade. Bryan Danielson left WWE for AEW and has gone on the record to say part of the appeal of leaving was that working with AEW, he'd get to do bucket list items like wrestling in the G1 Climax. He's now retired as a full-time wrestler, banged up as hell because AEW worked him to the ground in his final few months despite working through a neck injury, and he has still wrestled in 0 G1 Climax matches. Part of the reason this year's Wrestle Kingdom seems so cobbled together and barren is that New Japan, a company that famously plots out their major storylines years in advance, had to cope with the losses of major talent that they'd invested hugely in over the years in Okada and Ospreay. And while Ospreay's departure was signposted really well in advance and could be planned around, it was very clear that New Japan was not ready at all for the other one. Kazuchika Okada's departure tour was one of the most uncomfortable things I can remember in recent pro wrestling memory. Like, we're talking Will Smith describing his marriage levels of discomfort here. When he wrestled Bryan Danielson at last year's Wrestle Kingdom, there was a little rumbling around his contract ending soon, and the WWE and AEW vultures were circling, but nobody predicted what was to come next. Okada was the person that New Japan had invested their entire future in, who Hiroshi Tanahashi had passed the torch to as the ace of the company, who was the hill Tetsuya Naito could never climb over in Tokyo Dome until eventually he did, and who seemed certain to be a New Japan lifer until his time was up. And then after another Tokyo Dome victory, not against any like New Japan talent or not losing or putting anyone over on his way out, where he wrestled an AEW star, he was basically like, see ya, and a retirement tour was plotted out on the fly, reportedly against Ghetto's knowledge. In that tour, he basically got one more go around of beating the entire New Japan roster, most likely because Tony Khan didn't want his new prize signing losing on the way out, while New Japan got precisely nothing from the deal in return. Like, Okada held the most meaningless belts in New Japan, the never open weight trios championships, and he didn't even eat a pinfall to drop them. They were vacated instead after a successful title defense. The only silver lining New Japan fans who'd miss Okada were presented with wasn't that there was a new star who beat him and may go on to be better than him one day. All that we were given was we could simply remember that Okada had been there once, and wasn't that really nice while he was? And that was that. The two companies continue to work together and could easily sign off on Okada and Ospreay continuing to juggle both occasionally, but neither are booked this weekend. Even the way AEW talks to New Japan fans is so fucking patronizing. Like, bragging about the fact that they're so generous that New Japan fans get to watch Wrestle Dynasty on the New Japan World app that fans already pay for specifically to watch New Japan content. It's like, we didn't rob you guys, you're welcome. Like, what? Like, that's not, like, we should get it on the app. That's what we pay for the fucking app. And I'm not even trying to villainize the likes of Tony Khan or Okada or Ospreay here. Tony Khan's priority needs to be building up his brand as strong as he can, and that's exactly what he's doing. The blame for undermining New Japan lies squarely at the feet of New Japan themselves, who have allowed themselves to so haplessly be bullied and devalued by this partnership. Does a single person out there want to take a punt and suggest that the current New Japan Strong Openweight champion Gabe Kidd has even a 1% chance of beating Kenny Omega this Sunday? Or that Shingo Takagi is going to get a run as AEW International Champion in favor of Takeshita? About as close as we might get to New Japan being thrown any kind of a bone here at AEW's expense is the Young Bucks might lose the vacant IWGP Tag Team Championships when they face the United Empire's Great-O-Khan and a mystery opponent. But even then, the belts are only vacant because of an injury to Great-O-Khan's previous tag team partner, Hanare. So essentially, O-Khan here is interviewing for a job he already had. And even then, I'd say it's 50-50 whether AEW allows an asset like the Bucks to lose to him. It kind of all hinges on who they've got as the mystery opponent. And if someone AEW benefits, they'll probably win. If it's not, they're definitely losing. If right now you're thinking, yeah, but like, what can New Japan do here? Like, Tony Khan can offer their wrestlers a contract and schedule much more convenient and better for them and their lives. And if they didn't get into bed with them, then they wouldn't even get cool stuff like having Takeshita in the G1. And that's a fair point to bring up, but there also is a very viable and obvious alternative right there on the table, and I guarantee you that alternative would jump at the chance to replace AEW as New Japan's main partners. Yes, WWE have formed for ripping scenes like the once vibrant British wrestling scene apart for their own benefit in the recent past, and I've no doubt that they'd be just as likely to go for the likes of Okada and Ospreay, and by all accounts, they were in the running to try and sign them too. But the way this regime of WWE is operating today under Paul Levesque and Nick Khan, as opposed to the Vince McMahon era led by a man who seemed to historically just take pleasure in decimating potential competitors just because he could, means that the benefit in kind to New Japan would also be light years better than what they get from AEW. What WWE lack in the nerdy wrestling fan enthusiasm of Tony Khan, they make up for in spades with brand recognition. The days of AEW beating NXT weekly in the ratings are dead and gone. WWE have pivoted really well in the last few years, utilizing household outside names like Logan Paul, Pat McAfee, and Bad Bunny, while bringing back global megastars like The Rock and John Cena to make any comparison to AEW as a competitor in terms of brand recognition absolutely laughable at this stage. Put it this way, over the Christmas, my parents, who have zero interest in wrestling beyond asking me how the parties are going asked me about WWE coming to Netflix. They did not ask me about AEW renewing their deal with ITV. In fact, when I tried to explain to them what the show in Wembley was that I was going to see last August, I got that kind of glassy-eyed look that, you know, when you just lose non-wrestling fans when you're trying to explain something to them that they're just never going to get. That's the AEW effect on non-fans. And that's fine. Tony Khan seems happy running AEW as the nerdy option and getting a kick at doing stuff like having the ROH Television Championship matches on Max. Like, great. That's what he wants to do, and there's nothing wrong with that if he's happy and the business is doing well. So while WWE are unlikely to run Forbidden Store style pay-per-views, think about how big of a deal it would be for New Japan if Zack Sabre Jr. showed up as a surprise entrant in the Royal Rumble on Netflix holding the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. A few years back on the old Low Blows podcast, my co-host Corporate Keen pitched an idea of having established WWE names who are getting a bit stale go on excursions like Young Lions do in New Japan before they get brought back with repackaged as a star. The logic was that sometimes just having people in random matches, winning one week and then losing the next, made fans get bored of them. And a great way to rejuvenate interest in them is to have them just disappear off TV for a while, do some indie bookings to get them back their cool factor, and then bring them back with a lot of coolness and goodwill built up. And WWE are already kind of doing this. Think of them pulling Drew McIntyre from TV after his Hell in a Cell loss to CM Punk, and then bringing him back as a hot, vibrant act on Raw after Survivor Series. Even in Ireland, we've had the likes of the Judgment Day and Lyra Valkyria wrestle in high-profile indie matches over here very recently. Now imagine the possibilities that come into play if WWE were to do similar with New Japan. We could get Shinsuke Nakamura or AJ Styles wrestling in G1 tournaments again. Or you could even catapult someone who doesn't have a history with New Japan, like Karrion Kross or Akira Tozawa, in to remind people that they're actually fucking good wrestlers in a way we just don't get to see on WWE TV each week. Say what you want about WWE's checkered history of working with other promotions, but they've also no problem putting some of their bigger names in high-profile matches there. So while the logic they'd use is similar to how AEW approach it currently, it's just much more interesting than choices like Lance Archer, Konosuke Takeshita, and Wheeler Yuta, who you'd kind of just expect to end up working with New Japan, whereas you fucking would never expect to see The Miz on a New Japan show, and that's interesting. The last argument for partnering with WWE over AEW is, well, what do they have left to lose at this stage? If their partnership with AEW has left their January 4th WrestleMania equivalent show looking like any other show of the year because their roster is so decimated at this stage, they kind of already hit rock bottom. In the short term, even if it doesn't work out in the long term, partnership with WWE would seem fresh and create a buzz about the company that's just been missing, except for the occasional fleeting moment, probably since COVID. They'd get some decent names involved and have decent matches. There'd be a shot in the arm for the Tokyo Dome. They'd get the rub from being associated with Netflix and having their stars appear on that every now and then, and a fresh looking match or two on next year's Wrestle Kingdom. And at the very least, even if a partnership with WWE wasn't on the cards, it's still worth discussing if it's in New Japan's best interests to break up with AEW. Right now, they're in a relationship that's gotten stale. They're just repeating the same patterns over and over because that's the established form of their relationship. And actually, their life has gotten significantly more boring than it used to be before the relationship came along. That is exactly the kind of situation you have where you're like, I need to break up this relationship. So Gato, I need you to remember that you're a strong, confident man with a lot to offer anyone who's lucky enough to be in a relationship with you. And you can do better than this. I think it's time to take Tony Khan out for a coffee and a long walk that ends with you telling him, Tony, it's not AEW, it's IWGP. That's been Low Blow Shorts for this week. Tomorrow, the 12 Rounds of Christmas returns to discuss how being late makes you a dick. And I'll be back with another Low Blow Short later this month to preview the Royal Rumble. Until then, I've been Jer Leggett, and that's the bottom line, because Low Blow said so.